And
Testing?
Are the microphones on?
Okay. Mine
Okay.
seems to be on. There it is. Okay.
Welcome to this meeting, a special meeting of the Rehoboth Beach Planning Commission at 1:30. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Gay,
Here.
Commissioner Stockdale, I understand is absent. Commissioner Ellison,
Here.
Commissioner Davis, I understand is going to be absent. Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
Commissioner Strange,
Here.
Commissioner Hunter, I believe, is to be absent. Myself, Dewey, and Commissioner Bryan.
Here. We have a quorum. Call this meeting to order. Ms. Womack. Ms. Womack, do you have any additional mail or other advices, please, as to the publication of notices?
The agenda was published in City Hall and on the portal on November 13th. It was amended and reposted November 14th, November 18th, and November 20th. The public notice, I don't have any of my information, my packet with me, but I can verify that the public notice was posted according to regulations. And also, signage was posted on the property. Mailing went out to people within 200 feet. And I have no additional correspondence.
All right, thank you, ma'am. First matter on the agenda for today is a continuation of the preliminary review of site plan review application number 0523-04, 1 Rehoboth Avenue Hotel. It's property in the C1 Commercial District, and I believe it's designated as 1 Rehoboth Avenue, and Vincent G. Robertson Esquire is here on behalf of the applicant.
Sounds like I'm in trouble. Use my full name.
Welcome.
For the record, I'm still Vince Robertson and still with Park House, Garrick and Swayze. And as Chairman Bryan said, we're here to address some final items that were in the planning department, the staff's letter, along with Wallace Montgomery, the joint letter. So we're going to stick to those. I know you have a full agenda, and the chairman's given me a tight window, and we're going to try to stay under that, at least from our side. So just going through, as you know, I have a PowerPoint, but that just kind of keeps us on track and keeps things flowing and visually. It's the same team as before. I'm not going to introduce everybody because you've seen them all at several meetings at this point, but I would ask Wally to come on up. As you remember, Wally is with NOR. He's the architect of record for this project. Again, just for purposes of what we're going to do is run through the items by number that were in that letter. And I'm sorry, I didn't realize they're not on the screen. I'm sitting here looking at a screen thinking, this is a great presentation, and you all can't even see it. So there you go. Just so you can see the fancy pictures, that's the title screen. That's our team, again, like you saw before. And this is where we are, just to show that we're going to go through the items in that letter. So with that, the first one was comment 1A, which was to add the ADA crosswalk on the garage plan. We've highlighted that as shown on the screens. That's been added in for the ADA parking spaces. What I'd like to do is if we could just go through these, and then maybe if you have any questions at the end, if that works. So we feel like, and I don't know, Wally, jump in if you need to add anything.
No, I think that's.
Well, I say that, Mr. Robertson, there may be questions that intervene.
Sure. Yeah, I think just to point out here, we did add the ADA striped access aisle from the 2 access aisles at the parking spaces, continuing over to the elevator as pointed out in the comments.
And also, when you speak, please ask those who speak besides yourself to speak clearly into the microphone because we're having some recording problems with the video unless they speak directly into the mic.
Okay.
And I guess I have a procedural question. There are some issues that in the building inspector's report related to some of this. Are they going to go afterwards, or should we do those simultaneously as they go?
Well, it was our understanding that their issues were the ones that were in the October 9, 2024 letter, and also that are in the plans. So that's what this follows. So
Okay, so this
Yeah, no,
addresses that. Okay.
Yeah, this addresses, so what we're not, just backing up, we're only addressing the ones where there were issues.
Yeah, got
If
it.
it said
Okay.
acknowledged, we're
Okay.
skipping past those. And each slide on the screen refers to the number on that letter
Okay, fine.
at the
Okay.
top. So the next one is, there was a comment at 1B about adding parking stops into the individual spaces. Those have been shown, they're itty-bitty on the screens, but they're stops at the, what would you call it, the head end of each parking space. So those have been added in. There was comment 2A, little I and little 2I, little 2, about the access to the dumpsters and the operations of the dumpsters themselves. So I'm going to turn that one over to Wally.
Yeah, so to respond to this one, you'll see here actually designated by the dotted dashed red line, we've added in a what we're going to call a service corridor to provide access from the retail spaces to a door located next to the loading area. So any garbage or access for maintenance or what have you could be through the back of this, and then garbage could be taken out through here and then over into the garbage area that's located in this area as we had shown before. So each of these retail areas, however this ends up being divided, will have access to a service corridor that leads to that loading area and right to the exterior.
And this next one relates to that area in particular, although the corridor's not been highlighted, but it again shows those dumpsters. There's a question about the use and accessibility of the dumpsters. They're smaller ones, and we showed you pictures of those before. And there was a concern about, how they would get out to the street, and they would be, because they're essentially at grade, they would be wheeled out by employees when the trash comes to be picked up, which is what happens all over the city. So they're not sitting out, at all hours of the day. And Jeff Gosnier from Grottos is here. He could explain that that's what they do now. The other thing is there was a concern about pedestrian safety, and it kind of dawned on us that this is actually safer than if they were bigger trucks, because here you actually have a person that's attached to the dumpster physically moving it out versus a truck with a guy in the truck who can't necessarily see people around him going and loading the dumpster up and over the truck. So we feel like this is the safest way of proceeding. We've shown on there 6 dumpsters. That's just to show the maximum. Obviously, that's going to be driven by real need. Chris Berg testified the last time around that hotels generally just don't generate that much trash. One of these spaces is going to be an arcade, which itself wouldn't generate that much trash. So that leaves the proposed grottos on the corner of Rehoboth Avenue and the boardwalk, which does generate trash. But we know what that has from the current grottos, which is, I think, just 2. Yeah. So we feel like this is more than adequate, probably more than we need, and also serviceable.
Yeah, Vince, I have a question. I agree with everything you said so far, but my question is, when you wheel them out, where are you wheeling them to? Because the only access you have is all access to the building.
Mike, pull your microphone closer, please.
I'm sorry, what?
Pull it closer.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to explain that?
Is when you wheel them out, where do they get wheeled to? Because the roadway, everything is taken up by two-way access. So where does it go?
The intent would be that the garbage truck would have to sit somewhere in this vicinity, and then we would bring the rolling carts out to that area for pickup.
So it'd be blocking access to the hotel.
Right, but it's only short term, and that's the same as how they operate now, and restaurants all over town operate. They're behind the Grotto restaurant right now. They're wheeled out and then wheeled back in. So we just don't, and early in the morning also. So we don't see that as a traffic issue.
So is it every morning early? Is that the general plan?
6 days. Well,
6 days a week? What?
We do 6 days a week now.
Okay.
yeah.
And what time?
I'm sorry, in the summer.
What time of day?
Normally, they're done before 10 o'clock in the morning. They want to do it. I mean, that's part of it. They don't want to be on the streets.
Yeah, we probably need to get them.
Right, because what I'm getting at is that for however number of minutes or time it's there, there's zero access into the hotel or exit from the hotel, which is kind of unusual. That's my concern.
Yeah, you have to come up to one of the microphones or this one. Whichever one.
Yeah, it's on. We have actually been doing it that same way at our North Boardwalk location. We've been open there for 30 years. We've always had the Scirocco until about 9 years ago. It was an active hotel. The Admiral next door is an active hotel. We've never had any issues with this. I mean, it's been there, I said 30 years doing the same thing. We're not changing that way. I mean, for this, it's the same thing.
All right, so what you're saying is there's practice history that shows for the several minutes that it's blocking access to and from your previous experience, it's so nominal not to be of a concern.
Correct.
Okay.
And identify yourself, please, sir.
Sorry, Jeffrey Gosner. I'm the president of Grotto Pizza.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Jeff. Then This one is for Wally. There was a question about the 45-degree wall in the driveway, so Wally.
Right. Yeah, in response to this, this is the last version of the plan on the left, which shows the 40, I think you can see, yeah, right there. You can see the 45-degree wall. And basically that was a low height, sort of a curb element, but we've removed that and we can flush out this area so that it's a little bit more wide open for better access.
The next one was comment 4AI, and that had to do with the heights. So Wally, if you want to explain that.
Yeah, there was a comment regarding the two differential heights, one at the loading area, which is slightly higher, 9'8", and then as you get down into the actual proper garage entry, which is lower, it's 8'2". This slide depicts a couple of different versions of warning bars hanging at the clearance heights, which we would incorporate here to make sure people know that the lower clearance exists as they get down to the parking garage. So you'd have two different heights. However, the loading will be higher at 9'8", and then you'll have a warning bar at the is that one right? Yeah.
Oh, all right.
And then a warning bar at the entry to the entire hotel, which also warns them of the 8'2" at the lower area.
And just for reference, it's hard to see on that one, but the top one is the Boardwalk Plaza, and that bar is at 7 feet. So
I was
that's
going to ask that. 7 feet?
it's 7 feet, yeah, which is lower than both of ours. And the other one is the Brighton Suites, and that sign you can't see it on here, but it actually says large vehicle parking only, and it's 8'7". So you know that. I guess that's their large vehicle entrance because they have one at the Brighton Suites around the corner on, I guess that's First Street, you know, which maybe I guess smaller ones could use. But anyhow, so, you know, at the measurements we talked about 9'8" and 8'2", you know, we're consistent with or bigger than other hotels in the city. I mean, we didn't, you know, there's other hotels that are similar. These are just two examples.
That's an interesting comparison. Thanks for providing that, because I had wondered about the heights. Yeah.
The next slide, there was a comment or question about the heights and where they were measured from.
Yeah, and
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. We got a lot going on up there. So in response to that, I think just to clarify, the plan is to, and again, we've taken the heights measured from Rehoboth as far as the overall height for the 42 max, and then the intent would be to have 42-foot high at the roof level as shown here. So what we did is we actually added a notation at these ground level elevation designations, grade designations to depict that it was measured from Rehoboth.
Rehoboth Avenue?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and we had said that before. I think at one point it wasn't clear where it was from, and then we'd stated that it was Rehoboth Avenue, but we've added that to the plans, and that's where it will be from. And this is just another indication of the same height measurements.
Same depiction.
And then there's a question about the site plan, you know, whether there's evidence of the lot being consolidated. Just the evidence that we have, and, you know, for what that's worth, is the corrective deed was recorded back in 2023. Actually, it was recorded before. There was a whole bunch of ordinance changes that changed the ordinance and then unchanged the ordinance and moved language from one section to another, I think from 236 to 270 or back and forth or whatever. But the counties consolidated it. But I would say to the extent that we still need to address that, if you all feel that we need to, that can happen concurrently with the site plan review, because you would be approving the site plan, which would include the consolidation of the lot. So if that's an issue, we'd like that to just be part of that.
What would you do to clarify it?
They would do an application, right?
Well, I guess that's a question, you know, for you all, whether as part of the public hearing, we just add the application for the lot consolidation, or if you would just take that up as part of the site plan review, because obviously the site plan is going to include the consolidated lot, and it shows it that way now, everything you've been reviewing, so.
I think it has to be a separate public hearing within the same meeting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, let's have a separate.
I think it
Within the
does, just
same
for,
meeting.
I mean, if there was paperwork on file that it was done administratively in 2023 before the ordinance changed, that would be one thing, you'd be done. But I
Yeah.
gather there's not.
Well, yeah, and the other thing is it gets confusing because there's kind of two different types. There's the consolidation where you do it, you know, by deed, and then there's zoning consolidations that just happen because you have lots with property buildings
Right,
that.
by
strip-
use,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But we can, I feel like we can sidestep that just by following that
Yeah,
process
that's
and
fi-
dealing with it
I
in the
think that's
same
fine.
public hearing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
would you please put that on your to-do list?
We certainly will.
We don't want to hold this up.
Yeah, no, understood, and we can get that done. And then there was a minor comment, I think, and we'd said this early on, and I'm just not sure it tracked through all the plans, that that's a breakfast room, so that note's been added on there. And as we pointed out, this is gonna be buried so far into the hotel, I mean, you know, it's gonna be guests only. There's no intention for that to be event space or, you know, third-party restaurant space or anything like that. That's just a breakfast room amenity for the hotel guests. And that note's been added. And then there was a question about notations for, you know, how the folks are going to know that it's limited parking for check-in only. Chris Berg had talked about that last time around, but we're going to have signage that denotes that on the site. And we can include these types of signage on the site plan if you wish, just to have notes about that.
Yes, please.
Okay. And so our ask is for a public hearing next month, but in talking with the chairman, it sounds like the city moved the meetings up to the,
Yeah,
whatever, the
so there's
4th
not
and
enough
5th or
notice
5th
time.
and 6th. So I'm going to ask that we respectfully request there be a special meeting in December for this for public hearing. And I know I can ask, but I also fully understand that we'd like to, at a very minimum, because this has taken, as you all know, for all of us a long time, that we
Well, I
have
think
the.
Christmas Day is open for everyone. Where are you?
I'm almost to the point where I'd agree to that.
You might want to ask your wife.
Yeah, my kids wouldn't be thrilled, but, you know, if we can't do December, let's get this done in January.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we.
So I think, you know, that's the thank you slide. That's our presentation. So if we have any other questions, and as I said, that ran through all the items in that letter that, you know,
Right.
weren't already resolved or addressed.
Mr. Janis, do you have any unanswered questions that you need to have addressed here? Because I see some things in red. Saw a lot of things in blue, but building height, 42-foot max. I assume that's all okay?
I would hesitate to say yay or nay on it, as we haven't seen, this is the first time seeing these documents today, so I would like to bring them back and look at them thoroughly, but everything currently looks as if have addressed all of our issues.
Okay, so you're talking about the document that we got yesterday?
Correct.
Okay.
So what kind of final plans would you anticipate having before the public hearing? And what do you need from them before the public
So
hearing?
I think a recollection of all of the comments that were obviously made on record, make sure that those made the plan set, and then any comments that have been made today
Right.
get associated in.
But are these the revised plan, so you would go with these revised plans that they presented today?
I would go with a tentative yes, but I would like to review them a little
Okay,
bit more
all right,
thoroughly.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so
And we understand that as well.
Yeah.
Just the plans you saw, because there was, I know Ms. Gray mentioned to us too, that there was their red line or check plans that we saw. And that looked like that tracked everything that was in the letter too. And actually, that was informative to have too, just to make sure we were all on the same page. But we'll revise the plans, get a final set.
That's what I'm asking.
Really quickly to Matt.
A revised, clean set
Yeah,
that
so
doesn't have all the
that,
red.
and electronic and paper,
Yep.
so that he can get them out to you. so
Yeah,
we can
that's
roll in
perfect.
January.
Yeah, and just to be clear, on that red line set, that was a document that was used to formulate our
Yeah.
review. So
Right.
that it coincides with exactly what our comments were to the letter.
Yeah,
I agree with that as well. Thanks, Matt. That was actually helpful, so. yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
this
well, it's
process has worked much better in the way we've developed it in terms of what we ask and what you provide and the timeliness of what you provide. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Well,
Any other questions from the planning commission, Mr.
they have to go.
Mr. Ellison?
Oh, okay. These are probably for Wally. If you go back to the plan of, first floor plan, you indicated there that the refuse out of all of the commercial spaces
Right,
enter through that door into the back end of the loading zone.
right.
How do we deal with the refuse from the hotel?
The hotel would come actually basically just out the front lobby and around the corner. And the reason for that is, or there's a logic behind that, is that the hotel lobby, because of the way the lifeguard station sits and the way that plan is for the ramps, it has to have a different elevation, floor elevation. So it's actually a little bit above what the rest of the retail sits. And it's actually not uncommon for this to happen because the hotel doesn't generate a whole lot, but our elevators are centrally located. So, with this size of an operation, that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, we're obviously, if the plan develops and we can find an easier way to do it, we will. But at this point, that's the plan.
So did I hear you right? Right outside,
Yeah,
out
it'd
the
come out,
lobby?
right. And remember, this is a jump lobby, which really is more or less a circulation element to get you to the upper floors. So it's got a little less, what we think of as
Right,
lobby.
I've got a question about that a little later on, but
Okay.
can you trace for me exactly what happens on the loading zone? You're
Oh, you
getting
mean-
the trash out through,
Oh,
from the commercial space, then
Gotcha.
what happens?
So the loading zone, there's a door right here at the termination of the
Right.
service corridor. So that actually is would be a flush grade there. So you would just walk past the loading area and then across, and you'd be actually all on the private property there and just head into the dumpster or garbage area.
Well, I did a little calculation. Is the dumpster area, is that at the first floor elevation?
It's flush with the grade right outside of it, correct?
So up maybe 3.5 feet or?
No, it's a little bit of a grade up, but it's not 3.5 feet, no.
Well, I measured it on your plan, and from the end of the wall where the double doors are entering the dumpster area, you've got a 3-foot drop, if that's assuming that the dumpster area is at the first floor elevation. So I presume that it would have to be at least 3.5 feet.
Oh, I see what you're
Higher.
saying. No, it's graded up. No, you're right. It's graded up. I apologize. So yeah, it's flush at that point. Correct. It's flush with the outside grade at that point, and then it actually sits on a higher area. I'm sorry, I
So
misinterpreted.
it's
what you're saying.
probably more like 4.5 feet.
I
that
think
point.
I think you're right. It's about 3 feet
Yeah,
up from
I
that.
measured it.
Yeah. Right. Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Okay. Back to the lobby, I don't see any staff area. I don't see any, check in, check out, pay my bill area. Where does all of that occur?
So
Just a curious question. That has nothing to do with code.
yeah, it's an operations thing, right? Oh, I don't know if we have it in this. I don't know, John, if you want to. I mean, there are various ways. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like a Sonder or those kinds of operations where it almost operates like an Airbnb. So a lot of this is like a remote check-in, oftentimes is what we see. And then you'll have access based on that. So it's sort of at least this is the way we've kind of envisioned it, is more of a cross between a typical hotel product and an Airbnb product would be kind of the way I would see it.
So there's no front desk and no office?
Not on this level. We've got a small reception upstairs.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think it was on the first level.
Right, it's not totally
Correct.
autonomous.
No,
Right,
no.
okay.
Hotels seem to be going that way. But
No, it's not totally autonomous,
Yeah.
but it would be more of a combo. But yeah, you'd have an area on the second
floor.
Well,
Okay,
second floor.
I just didn't see it called out.
Right, it's not in this package. But
Right, and I don't think we've really shown, I mean, we've showed placeholders for beds and things like that in the
Correct.
hotel rooms, but we haven't shown all the FF&E throughout the whole hotel, which would include the
Yeah,
check-ins
okay,
and lobby
right.
areas. So,
Right, so the intent is we'd have a small area for reception on the second floor proper, not on the first floor. So the jump lobby would have access to the second floor.
So that's just one big sort of empty space leading
Yeah,
to the.
and that's the reason for
that's-
it being kind of a tight area too, is it's more just to get you to the second level so you've got the proper access to the hotel.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Strange.
Yes, please. And Vince and I were talking right before the meeting started. My question is with regard to the interface between the north side of the hotel and the reconstruction that's currently going on with the sidewalks. And on the current drawing that we had, with regard to the elevations that were involved and the steps were involved, and in fact, on that drawing, I can't quite see it completely, but it looks like where part of the driveway is actually on part of the steps. And you were saying that the city is correcting whatever they're doing, but we have no knowledge of that.
So I'm going to ask Greg to come up on that, and while he's walking up, I will tell you that we had some concerns about those interfaces and the somewhat same questions, and Greg and I think Wally was on the phone, and some of our principals had a meeting. I don't know if Mary Ellen was there, but Evan was there, and the city manager. Matt was there, and Davis, Bowden, and Friedel were there to make sure that those plans lined up. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong on this, what we found was, that DBF's plans were correct as to locations of the lifeguard building. I don't want to send off any alarms on that. They had sort of shown the adjacent properties, which includes ours, informationally. They hadn't necessarily verified that, and that pushed things off on our side on their plans. We've always had our plans correct. So, and if you want to explain that in technical terms, I'm sure you can do a better job.
Commissioner, thank you again, Mr. Strange, for bringing this up, because it encouraged me to really dig deep into this. Okay, and you just said something that I'm going to clear something up that I think might make this all kind of go away. You said steps. There's no steps. There's a graphic representation. I'd like to, if I can zoom in here, if I can pan over, and I know what you're referring to, and I think it's confusing a lot of folks. There's a graphic representation on the plans that were prepared by DBF for the lifeguard station of these hard.
Let me just interrupt you. So you know what you are looking at, what he's pointing at, that's just where we superimpose DBF's plans onto ours. That's not our drawing.
That's correct. Yes, correct.
Could you identify yourself, please?
I'm so sorry. Greg Rischel with Pinoni Associates, we're the applicant's engineer.
Yes,
I'm very sorry about that. There's a graphic representation on here. These I'll call them horizontal lines, and it's a graphic that they chose to use that just kind of indicates where there's a sidewalk that's got a little bit of a slope to it. Like these are the ramps. Those aren't stairs at all. They're not steps.
Okay, well, let's assume that is the case and accept that as a given. The slopes involved,
You sit closer to the.
oh yeah, the slopes involved show it as 1 and 16, and at that point requires railings. And the railings on the left side of your facility, actually they have to be on the left and the right, but particularly with your building, that means you have railings that are involved flush to the building.
Correct. For these areas here, where they're showing ramp slopes down, and they have the grades labeled on here, 1 and 12, which is 8%, which does require handrail.
Right.
Anything over 5% requires a handrail. What's a little misleading is this particular area right here, which I think you're potentially focused on, which is in front of our entrance. Specifically looked at that. I have an exhibit here. We looked at their grades. It's at the end. You want to flip?
How do we get back to the?
Well, I probably need to zoom back out.
Whoop. It's one of those, so yeah.
So let me kind of, just to clarify, I think I had prepared this small exhibit here. Again, this is DBF's plan, as you can see. And what I identified was that how they had shown some of the property lines for our parcel weren't in the right spot. This property line here is actually over here. And you can kind of see the graphic representations I labeled here. This is the Sirocco's driveway, which is basically going to be our driveway, right? And this little section here, these other vertically on this image, cross-hatched areas are those ramps where the sidewalk slopes, levels out, because you're going from this higher grade elevation down to the boardwalk. They use the same graphic symbol right here, right at the end, because of the curb work they're doing at the end of Baltimore Avenue. This is what we call blended transition. There's a little bit of an elevation change there that has to, it's kind of similar to like what you see, the curb ramps you see at the street intersections around town. Got to taper it a little bit, but at the property line, the elevation change is flat. It matches existing grade, it has to. So and it's short enough, it doesn't require, it's one, not steep enough to require a handrail right here, and two, short enough that it doesn't require a handrail. That's why you don't see handrails at curb ramps at street intersections,
Right.
Okay?
But in the longer sections,
The longer sections will absolutely require handrails. And their plan should have indicated, or probably do show handrails when we construct this building. There's going to obviously be some periphery disturbance happening around, and this sidewalk and ramps may need to be reconstructed.
Okay.
And they will require handrails, absolutely.
That makes sense.
Right, and at the upper far right-hand side, at least based on the current drawings we have, and it's hard to depict them, that slope would require a handrail, which ends up being on the street side where you're trying to exit. So you've got about 2.5 feet where a handrail would be.
You're talking about our entrance, our exit.
Exit and entrance, yes. On the right-hand side. So it'd be the exit.
Whoops,
Yeah, it's kind of,
bear with me,
no, take your time.
bear with me. Steer the ship here. Okay. So here's the elevations that they're proposing. Okay, and they're you can see 18.08, 17.75. That's a small grade change there that they're proposing, but this is basically reconstruction work happening because of the new sidewalk work that they're having to happen. When we build this hotel, this existing driveway that you see is going to become the new garage entrance driveway. We have to reconstruct this as a new heavy-duty driveway apron. These grades will get adjusted a bit from what's there today, but there's no need for a handrail across here. I'm not quite sure why they proposed a grade lower than existing grade at the property line. It should match existing grade. What you see here is this 18.04, and they're proposing an 18.08 over this. So the difference in that is 0.04 feet. That's half an inch, and that's about a 10-foot distance. It's negligible. Did I answer your question?
Somewhat.
And let me just, I'd be more than happy to have a sidebar conversation, not to bog down today's conversation. If we wanted, if there's additional concern, I'd be more than happy to, we could sit down.
Well, the concern is one that we have two things going on here. One is what you folks are doing, which, great, let's move forward with that. It's that the diagrams and the documents from the city don't make any sense, and we don't have any of those. And part of the decision we have to make is based on your plans that comport with what the city says they're doing. And right now, what you're telling me is there's an agreement that the city is doing what isn't what's in the current plans.
Well, these are the current plans, though, so we can provide these to you so that you have them. You might not have seen these because these are a result of.
This is DBF's plan that we actually got
That'd be
from
good
the
to have
city.
Okay, well, you're right, we don't have that,
Yeah.
which is,
Okay, well, I apologize that you don't have the city's plans.
No.
Definitely, I took a lot of time, as you can see, with all my markups and whatnot. We went through, and we actually met with them a month ago or so to kind of discuss this very topic.
And we can provide that with.
I think
updated
that'd be
plans.
helpful. Yeah, I think that'd be
and the other
helpful.
thing is,
So we have on the screen, we can provide.
Yeah,
what you're saying
absolutely.
is they're all slopes, there's no steps, period.
There's no steps, no. This is public ADA access, you can't have steps.
Well, you could, but then it has some other implications, but
They are not proposing steps,
Right, okay.
nor are we. We intend, in a perfect world, if we could do this without disturbing this work that's being constructed right now, we would. Unfortunately, we know that's not going to happen because I'm sure the developers and the applicant do not want to have to tear out perfectly good sidewalk and put it right back again.
Right.
It's only going to be probably about a year old or so at that point in time,
Right.
but that's just the nature of construction. Unfortunately, the timing didn't just quite line up here.
Right. Now,
Would
the
it be
other
great
issue,
if it
which is not your problem, quite frankly, but you're going to end up being affected by that problem, is the way that the city designed the access at the beginning of the life-saving station. It doesn't meet any AASHTO or ASCE rules and regulations for two-lane access. And in fact, if you were to take a standard car or a standard truck and try to go in and out of your access or when you're exiting, it's actually going to run over what they have as their quote sidewalk and railing and curbing. So it's not your problem, but you're going to end up having issues because of the way the city did it, and that's unfortunate. But that's just something you're going to have to deal with. But it has no implications for your application. It's just It's unfortunate they did it that way. It could have been modified ever so slightly, and it would be much, much better than what's being done. But that's not what the city did. So,
The positive new side of that is we've got these plans, we've identified that, we know.
Mike, are you saying that because of the angle of the entrance?
yeah, the angle, it's the angle of the entrance and the radius of what a normal vehicle would.
Okay,
incur.
right, okay.
Right. And the way in which the city did it, they could have modified it ever so slightly,
Right,
and it would have been fine.
yeah.
But they didn't, and that's unfortunate.
Well-
And that was brought up a year ago, and
Yeah.
didn't pay
There's,
attention to it.
I didn't mean to cut you off there. There's going to be a lot of construction activity happening here with the construction of this new hotel, construction equipment coming and going. We've got to replace this sidewalk and curb and everything. It's going to get all torn up. We're going to build a nice new concrete, heavy-duty driveway apron there and blend it in with the existing sidewalks on both sides, and, make this all work itself out. It's just kind of the nature of reconstruction and construction projects
Right,
in
but
general.
the area I'm talking about is on the far northern side of the quote sidewalk. And it's the way they designed the access with their design, which impacts you. Now, in theory, you're not going to be doing anything to that, but you're stuck with it as a reality because they didn't do it right. And that's unfortunate. And it could have been done very easily, but hey, it is what it is. It doesn't impact you now, it doesn't impact your approval, but it's unfortunate that it was done that way because it's going to create problems downstream for people in general and everyone else because it was designed that way.
I actually have a related question, so leave that slide up there for just a minute. On a related note, not having to do with the sidewalks, because the Beach Patrol building has been somewhat of a moving target, in other words, it was approved before we knew how far out into the street it went, so the abandonment was kind of, past the 11th hour it happened, and you all already had your plans, and I know you've met with the city any number of times, but in seeing how other projects have gone, sometimes there need to be changes within the process of the construction. So I asked the City Public Works for a confirmation that the driveway, and I think it's shown as 24 feet, right? I've asked for confirmation that that fits with the current building of the Beach Patrol, and that will be met, because just to get confirmation from him on do those plans that they gave you however many months ago match what they are doing currently. So I wanted that to be part of the public hearing so that we had that, because I do think that you're impacted, as Mike said, by the Beach Patrol building.
Thank you.
While I have you here, are there any other open issues with the Beach Patrol building that you are having to resolve?
Not that I am aware of at this time.
All right.
Except for we wish that we were building both of them at the same time, so we wouldn't have to tear
All right,
sidewalks
yes,
and utility
I'll agree with Vince on that.
With the same engineer.
Yeah. Well,
Anyone else?
Just general questions? on
Yeah,
other
pull your mic up, Mike.
I'm sorry. A couple other general questions, which one I didn't ask the last time, and because I didn't, wasn't fully up to speed on it. You had gone through, and it took a long time to get some floodplain designation changes, and it was changed to I forget which one it was. Anyway, it was modified.
yeah, right, that's correct.
But with the modification, it requires an elevation of 2 feet plus 1 foot of freeboard, a total of 3 feet before human intervention is involved. My question is, and you may not be in a position to answer that, are you okay the way it's, I couldn't figure out from the drawings if in fact you were okay.
Yeah, so to clarify, the portion of the floodplain that was previously in VE, there was a little sliver that went, I wonder if it might even show on these drawings. I don't know that it does. Across the one corner, I'm looking at the lifeguard station. I don't know, we don't have our,
Went across the front corner where Dolly's was.
correct, thank you. That was remapped to Zone AO, which is limited flooding of a certain elevation. It's either usually 1 foot or 2 foot or less. So we're AO2, which is areas of shallow flooding.
Right.
What's required when it's per code in Zone AO is that the building needs to be flood-proofed to that elevation plus 1 foot.
Right.
So while he does his construction detailing of the building, he's got to flood proof that whole lower level up to 3 feet, and they'll have all the, don't let me speak out of incorrectly, they're going to have barriers that they have to put in front of the doors. When the storm's coming, they have these barriers that come out and they slide them in up to an elevation of 3 feet
Right,
above finished grade. So like, you know, from, say, the boardwalk elevation, it's up 3 feet.
right. And this is an area where, quite frankly, I'm not an expert in, but in looking at it, it just concerned me, is that you need the 1 foot before human intervention. After that, you're fine. And at least that's the way I read it. And so my concern was, did you have that? And it sounds like you do, but there may be a little iffy. It's something to be looked at just to make sure you're okay.
I guess
that's all.
I'm unclear what you mean when you say requires human intervention.
Human intervention is the part where you put flood barriers up.
Correct.
And you're allowed to do that. But you're also supposed to have 1 foot of freeboard independent of everything. And my question was, did you have that? Do you have that as a function of the floodplain with the new designation you have? And I wasn't sure.
We do. The way the code is written, and maybe Matt can clarify a little bit, because I know he's the floodplain manager for the city, is that what the FEMA is saying, what it's been zoned as, is that it's anticipated that during a particular storm of some magnitude, the water elevation could get to as deep as or as high as 2 feet.
Right.
Okay? So you really only need to have protection up to 2 feet. But to give yourself a little wiggle room, you do the freeboard.
Right.
So the code requires that everything just gets protected to 3 feet. So that's what we're going to do. Like it will be detailed with waterproofing elements up to an elevation of 3 feet. So you have that little extra room in the pan at the top, you know, so you don't overflow. It's kind of like the overflow drain in a bathtub. It's not quite at the top. It's down a little bit.
One last question, and this is really for the city, and it's something that bothers me, and it's not a function of you folks, is with our code with regard to a loading dock and loading space and what the definition requires. And it indicates in the code, the language under 270-4, accommodation of off-street for loading and unloading motor transport equipment and designated to provide adequate space for efficient maneuvering into and out of loading. The current plan that's approved was for the dock space area, but it doesn't include adequate space for efficient maneuvering into or out of the loading dock. The reason I mention that is because this has come up several times and been problematic, is the fact the use of and. Now, I know we have a new attorney here representing the city, but and is a conjunctive adverb, and a conjunctive adverb connects two nouns that can have different, grammatically connected, but can have different logic within the sentence. And so you're required to have a loading dock and efficient maneuvering space. And this current plan, as have other plans that have come before us, and maybe some that'll come before us in the future, has the loading dock part, but it doesn't have on the property the efficient maneuvering space for that. So I'm raising that as a question, I guess, to the city more than to you, because you have to design it to what the city requires. And the building inspector approved this so far, questions of other issues, but my question is, I'm part of the planning commission, I have to ask, why wasn't the designated to provide adequate space for efficient maneuvering looked at?
Mr. Strange, I've been here less than a couple of weeks now,
I
so
know.
I'll be happy to take a look at it, and when this comes back, and then give
Okay,
you a response if that's fair.
It turns out it's a very big question because it has a dramatic impact on what people design.
Right.
And my concern is that it's been looked at rather casually, but our code indicates that if there is a word that doesn't have a scientific definition for it, the plain language interpretation is what applies. And in the case of and, as to what it is and how it works grammatically, has been the same for about 150 years, because I did the research on that. And also in the legal publications going back only about 70 years, it's very explicit as to what and means, and we seem to have disregarded that. And I'm concerned about that because it has a big impact on folks.
I would just add my comment on that, and I can work with Mr. Larson and Mr. Walton on this, is that I think the focus may not be on and, it might be what maneuvering space actually means, you know, because my concern is if you take a really strict interpretation on that, you'd almost need to put a cul-de-sac, you know, on every commercial property or hotel that needs a loading zone to get a truck to be able to drive in and drive back out or whatever, and the city's never interpreted it that way. I don't know of any code that would. You know, I think the way the city has historically interpreted that is the maneuvering means, you know, that you don't pull in and you can't get back out, you know, and in here, you can pull in and get back out. You know, it just seems like that would be inconsistent with prior applications of the code, and also, you know, just really have a significant impact on the ability to develop properties in Rehoboth.
Well, the reason I mention that is for two things. It's not picking you folks
No,
out
I understand,
specifically.
right. It's more a code issue, it strikes me.
It's a code issue. If it's not going to be applied, it's been misapplied in the past. If people did not understand the code, I don't care who it is, whether it's the building inspector, a previous attorney, or anybody else, the code is the code. And that's what the law currently requires. And it's not being handled that way. So we either have to change the code, or in the strictest sense, an applicant would have to get a variance to not have maneuvering space on their lot, which is perfectly fine if that's what elected to.
I just hope we don't have to do that. I think of the example that was used at First Street Station. That's a loading area that's a lane, you know, and that's every loading area that I could think of in Rehoboth is that same situation. I'm not aware of anywhere you could do like a 3-point turn in a loading area or anything like that anywhere in the city. I do think it's maybe a code issue that if you want to make that clear going forward, but I think we comply with the code.
Right, I wasn't, there's very explicit issues which you're addressing, and that's the important thing. But this is another one of those elements which has sort of been treated in a rather blasé fashion, and I think it's very important going forward because of the intensity of use is changing in Rehoboth Beach. It's very different than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, and the nature of the applications is changing. So if the code is written that way, we either start applying the code that way or a code change is made. So it makes it easier and people know exactly what's going on. And so I guess that was a general question to the current attorney for the city and the building inspector and Mary Ellen on that.
I don't think there'll be any.
Anyone else? Any other questions of the Planning Commission? Is there anyone here from the public to address this application? Seeing none, Mr. Robertson has suggested that we consider moving this forward to a public hearing.
That's correct.
Do you accept a motion for that?
Yes, is there a motion?
I move that the application for 1 Rehoboth be scheduled for a public meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a
Said
th-
public meeting, you meant
yeah,
public hearing.
Public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have a
And I just have a question then. Would there be a separate motion for the hearing on the lot consolidation, or can we make them part and part in a separate motion? Okay, so we'll do this one first and the other one.
just make that part of it.
So we can make it part of it. Can I have a friendly amendment then to add that we will also have a public hearing on the lot consolidation?
Yes, is there a
Agreed.
Yes and yes.
Okay.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Mr. Strange.
Yes, I'd just like to make sure that the applicant provides your drawings, the latest drawings that you have. And I don't know if the request has to be made to the city or to the applicant to provide what is really going on with the life-saving station so that we know what's actually happening and we have actual confirmed, validated, signed-off plans.
Okay, I can go back to Public Works for that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still, Mr. Janis, do you have any other requirements that we need to incorporate in a motion?
I believe you've covered them.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those, may I have a roll call vote, please, Secretary?
Commissioner Gay,
Aye.
and who's here? Commissioner Ellison,
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart,
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Strange,
I vote yes.
myself vote yes, and Commissioner Bryan.
Aye. Chairman votes aye. And we're moving it to public hearing. We'll have to determine that date
Yeah.
and let you know.
Yeah.
I would just ask that, obviously, it sounds like we can't do December, although
We,
Christmas is
We
still
don't
an
know.
option.
Possibly. Try.
But January, you know,
Yeah.
we're going to supply everything you need and
Yeah.
Matt needs so that we could shoot for
Yeah.
January, because, you know, we need to
Definitely, yeah,
get this
yeah, I don't
moving.
see any reason why not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
So we have the preliminary review.
Where's my agenda?
You can use mine, here. It's right here, It's preliminary review right there. Half the room leaves.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Well
Yeah.
done. Next matter before the Planning Commission is a preliminary review of partitioning application number 0924-09 on the matter of partitioning of the property located in R1 Residential Zoning District at 87 Henlopen Avenue. Who is here to present for that, please, sir?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a conflict of interest because I am involved in the matter before us. And our bylaw, number 18, says that if I am involved, then I have a conflict of interest, which I think I have. And the three things I need to do. One is to basically recuse myself. Number two is to vacate my seat. And number three is to refrain from discussing or certainly voting on anything associated with this item. So I will carry that out.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Mhm. We'll have 5 still, right? 1, 2, 3, yep.
Okay, we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Jim, you're going to come back for the last one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Randy Burton. I'm the owner of Burton Builder. We've been a contractor in Rehoboth for as long as I have known Guy Martin, who was actually, he and his lovely deceased wife, Nancy, were two of my very first clients 37 years ago when they bought their property. And we've had a long history together. I've also known Mr. Ellison for just about the same amount of time. We put in an application. Tim Willard and I are both have sworn affidavits before each of you in the file to represent Mr. Martin, which Mr. Martin is here as well. I think it's a pretty straightforward application. I think it speaks directly to Guy and Nancy's commitment to Rehoboth and the preservation of the character of this town over the years, wherein as much as this is a property that could very easily be petitioned into 3 much smaller lots, Guy and his daughters, Mr. Martin and his daughters, have chosen not to go that route and to divide it only into 2 parcels. I also submitted really just more for a visual, not as a portion of the official application, but a visual that shows one of the homes that's proposed to be built on the house. That's not necessarily a final drawing, but it's pretty close representation. It also shows in the second page there that a long part of Mr. Martin's commitment to this earth that we live on in his long career in helping to guide and manage the environment is to also not see all of these beautiful trees that have been on this property for many, many years taken down. And in fact, just this morning, yesterday, the demolition permit for the house was issued. We have full tree surveys that were done, not just by a surveyor, but by Sussex Tree, Jeff Meredith. There are 2 diseased trees on the property. One of them, we strategically designed this house that's going on the left side lot so that it would only require the removal of that 1 tree. And the tree that is in the front that is diseased with wood-boring insects, at this point, we have no intention of taking down. It's not in the footprint of the BRL, and it may end up coming down. But I think it's a pretty straightforward application. Mr. Willard can speak to any of the technical aspects of it, but we're basically looking at 291 by 75, or by, 91 by 75 lots. And they conform because the 91 was the original platting, as many of you know, I'm sure, of all of that area, that short couple of blocks of Henlopen Avenue up against Henlopen Acres. We'd love to see that we got onto the planning agenda for December. It sounds like you guys might have already set your agenda, and that won't happen. We'd like to get this petitioning request approved, understanding that we have to have an additional hearing. We had some delays because of some of the challenges that your commission has had with legal counsel and such.
Yes, sir, we didn't cause those, by the way.
No, I didn't. I wasn't saying that you did, Mr. Bryan.
We get blamed for everything.
That's, if you have any questions of me or of Mr. Willard, he's really just my, my prop at this point. Just kidding.
He's charging me to be, I'm charging him to be his prop.
Well, there's 3 rules for a lawyer. Don't go to jail for your client, get your money up front, and don't go to jail for your client. Any questions of the Planning Commission?
Are we going to hear from the building inspector?
We have his report.
Yeah, we
Does
do.
anyone have any questions of his report?
I have only one, and it is about the arborist report. I saw the one from Sussex Tree in there. I saw it. So only one of those trees is coming down now. You said,
Currently,
right?
yes, it
Yeah.
is the tree that in the diagram that I presented today, and there's a number that's associated with it on
Right.
Jeff's plan. It is on the left side of the existing garage
Mm-hmm.
of the existing home, Mr. Martin's home that's there now. So there is one tree on the left side. We have not made an official application for that, though. That'll come once the petitioning is finished and we make an application for.
Okay.
We're not taking that down during the demolition process or the petitioning process.
Okay,
to
well
be
then,
clear.
my only question, I see, Matt, you have on here that it's been preliminarily reviewed by the city arborist, and I recognize the fact that the city arborist has only been here for a few days, a couple of weeks, something like that. But I do think for the final hearing, we need to have a city arborist report, not an outside contractor report on the nature of the trees and which ones would be approved to come out.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I also believe that the applicant has done more work in that nature to recognize the requirements of the demolition.
Okay, great, yeah.
Application.
Okay.
Yes, in your report, actually, you're right, Mr. Janis. There is a subsequent report from Sussex Tree that went a little deeper
Okay.
than just his initial survey. So he provided us initial survey. In the demolition application, we then asked Mr. Meredith to go a little deeper at the request.
Right.
So it really outlines every
Yeah, all I'm
tree.
saying is it needs to be vetted by the city arborist, because the criteria in the code is very specific, and if the city arborist agrees with what's in the report, that's great, then it's all clear.
Yep.
But, yeah, just needs to come from the city.
Now, Mr. Janis,
Yes, sir.
would you think it appropriate to, once we get to that point, we have one more meeting on this, I believe, but to consider having the demolition a condition of final approval, or how would you like to
Is it
handle
going to be
it?
demolished in the meantime?
Or is it going, it's
Yeah.
coming down now?
Well, our 30-day waiting period began yesterday.
Okay.
Considering that would be the 20th of December, I doubt that, we're going to start right then, but soon after the first of the year is when we would remove the house. So the house would be removed in the process of the final petitioning.
It might actually be down before the.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, we'll deal with it at that time if we have to.
Okay.
Fair enough. Anything else? Any other
No,
questions from
and
members of
so,
the Planning Commission?
do we need to move this to public hearing?
We would need a
Okay,
motion for that.
okay, do you have any public?
Let's ask him.
Well, he just asked if there were any questions about it.
Okay, never mind.
Do you have any issues to,
I don't.
okay.
Is there anyone here from the public to address this application? All right,
I think it's just as well as not. It takes time.
okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion by the Planning Commission? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move to public hearing, the lot partitioning request number 0924-9 for 87 Henlopen Avenue.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call. Go
Aye.
ahead.
Or do we
Go
do
ahead
roll
and do a
call?
roll
Yeah.
call. We'll keep it simple, yeah.
Commissioner Gay,
Aye.
Commissioner Stewart,
I'm in favor.
Commissioner Strange,
I'm in favor.
myself in favor, and Commissioner Bryan.
Chair votes aye, and we'll move it to public hearing. We'll let you know the date.
And you have already, just for clarity, you have already scheduled made up a schedule for the December, you're going back to earlier in the month.
Yeah, we
in
have to,
December.
and so there's not enough time to
Right,
notice a
so there's
public
not
hearing.
enough time
Right.
for notice,
So
so
it
it'll
would
be January. Okay, very
It's a
good.
notice issue at this point.
No, understood.
yeah.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Okay,
Okay, ready?
here we go.
Yeah, we're not going to take a break, right? We're just going to go straight to, oh,
Let's take a break for 5 minutes.
okay.
Good call, Chair. Ms. Womack, recording? Okay, gentlemen. Are we ready to resume?
Yeah.
Okay.
The gentleman part was confusing.
The next matter is the project concept review pursuant to Section 236-31 of the Municipal Code for Beachview Hotel. And I believe David Hutt is the applicant's attorney. Welcome, Mr. Hutt. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Bryan and members of the commission, and then the city staff and solicitor that are here. For the record, my name is David Hutt. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Morris James. And this afternoon, I'm representing Seaboard Hospitality, LLC. As this was introduced just a moment ago by Chairman Bryan, we are here this afternoon for a project concept review for the Beachview Hotel, which, as you all know, has an address of 6 Wilmington Avenue. Ms. Womack, could I have access to the screens? Great. As the commission is familiar, and you just spent, I think it was very close to the 45 minutes that you had allotted to it, Chairman Bryan. But obviously there has been consideration given to local hospitality providers, including 1 Rehoboth Avenue, the Bellhaven, which is of course 2 Rehoboth Avenue, as a number of these providers are seeking to revitalize their properties within the ocean block of the city of Rehoboth Beach. As I mentioned, my client is Seaboard Hospitality, LLC, which operates the Beachview Hotel that began construction in 1980 and has been in continuous operation since 1982. This afternoon, the presentation will consist of a little bit of history and commitment to the city that Seaboard has, an overview of the project and its objectives for the commission. Mr. Sholkoff, an architect who I know the Planning Commission is familiar with from other projects, will present a project scope and some key features of the project just to highlight some of the features as part of this revitalization. And then I'll talk about some requested relief and what the next steps are here with the Planning Commission. While you may not instantly recognize the Seaboard Hospitality name, I'm sure everyone is familiar with the properties that this family of owner-operators has owned and operated within the city of Rehoboth Beach. That history begins back in the 1930s. George Shockley and his wife Eliza Shockley started this family involvement in hospitality, and that involvement began by renting cottages on Newcastle Street. They also, their home served as a boarding home, so they rented rooms in that as well, where they lived. In that same time period, these same individuals constructed and then operated a movie theater and tea room on Rehoboth Avenue, which many of you will know went on to become the Avenue Restaurant. The second generation of the Shockley family that followed them continued to operate and update these businesses and pass that torch forward for these hospitality and entertainment businesses. And that torch has been passed all the way forward now to the 4th generation of the Shockley family, which operates through the name Seaboard Hospitality, LLC. Seaboard renovated and restored both of those hospitality features that I described a moment ago. Both the rental units on Newcastle Street and the Avenue Restaurant, and these are presently highly rated travel destinations within the city. Of course, you would recognize them by their current names, which is the Avenue Inn and Spa and Cooper Cottages. Connecting the Shockley family to today's application for the Beachview Hotel is where you get to the 3rd and then now, of course, the 4th generation as the family expanded the hotel business. Ken Simpler and Alvin Simpler built the Atlantic View Hotel, certainly not in the city of Rehoboth Beach, but just down the way here in Dewey Beach, and that was in 1978. And 2 years later, Ken Simpler and Sam Cooper partnered to begin construction of the Beachview Hotel. Like it did with the Avenue Inn and then also Cooper Cottages, Seaboard Hospitality has recently begun a revitalization project down at the Atlantic View Hotel in Dewey Beach, and is here in front of the Planning Commission this afternoon as it seeks to embark upon that same process here for the Beachview Hotel. And with that, wanted to, of course, present this concept to the Planning Commission to get some initial preliminary thoughts and feedback on the concept. With respect to the current makeup of Seaboard Hospitality, and we have one of the members of the family operators here, Alex Moore, sitting near the back of the room. And you can see that is the family connection that still exists between the Shockley family and Seaboard Hospitality and each of these projects that I've talked about. Also with us today as part of the executives is William Helms. He was sitting next to Mr. Moore. He's the Vice President of Development and Facilities. And the consultants that have helped on this, their names are listed there, and certainly I'm the one speaking right now, and then Mr. Sholkoff, who you'll hear from in a moment. And you can see the other civil and structural engineers, as well as surveyors and design consultants that are involved with the project. While I know it certainly needs no introduction as to its location, this aerial image does show the location of the Beachview Hotel. And as you can see, of course, and recognize, the property does exist between Wilmington Avenue and Delaware Avenue. And if we were to look at current street photos of that, this is, of course, the view from Wilmington Avenue. And of course, the person who took this picture on Wilmington Avenue, if they turned around, they would be facing the Bellhaven property. And similarly, if you were the photographer for the Delaware Avenue picture and turned around, you'd be facing Funland on Delaware Avenue. As part of this concept review, and it's the purpose of them, so it certainly makes sense, but Seaboard Hospitality wanted to sort of pull the curtain back a little bit and let the Planning Commission know what its vision and its objectives were as part of this revitalization and renovation of the property, so that they can work with the city to see how best to achieve these goals. And with that, the vision itself is, as you can see, is to revitalize a 40-year-old hotel to reflect Seaboard Hospitality's standard for operating premier, individually distinctive resort properties. Within that, they focused on 4 key objectives that they wanted to accomplish as part of this. The first is safety and accessibility. The second is the property's aesthetics. The third was the guest experience. And the fourth was the employee environment. After defining what the vision was and some of those key objectives, the next step was for consultants to be hired and for Seaboard and those consultants to pour through the various codes that apply. The Comprehensive Development Plan, the Rehoboth Zoning Code, the Design Manual, and of course, not just the codes related to the city itself, but also things like the FEMA regulations, as well as the State Fire Marshal's regulations. As that code and regulation review process moved forward, the next step was to meet with individuals within some of those with the municipality itself. There were meetings that were conducted with the Building and Licensing Department that's here today, and also meetings that occurred with the State Fire Marshal as well to get some initial preliminary guidance. All of that culminated in the concept that was presented to you through and filed with a concept review application, and of course is why we are here this afternoon. With respect to each of those 4 objectives, just wanted to run through them quickly, and hopefully that'll help to provide some context as Mr. Sholkoff gets up and explains how some of the design features and renovation features interact with each of these objectives. First, with respect to safety and accessibility, again, it's a 40-year-old hotel, so the goal is to update that and to bring it, into modern times and meet the current building code, ADA requirements, fire marshal requirements, and FEMA regulations. In addition, and this particularly goes to the accessibility portion, but also directly ties into safety, we wanted to eliminate unsafe traffic patterns and reduce conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles as they enter and exit with their cars and as they certainly travel through the parking area that exists. The second broad objective relates to the property's aesthetics. Again, this is a 40-year-old hotel that could stand to have its exterior enhanced. And certainly, as we know in the comprehensive development plan, it talks about the importance of the ocean block to the city. And so, again, that was vital to this project and hopefully is important to the city as well. And that, again, would help to bring the hotel into greater alignment with the comprehensive development plan. The third objective was to enhance the guest experience. All rooms, of course, would be modernized as part of this. And there's also, and you'll hear, a desire to create some larger rooms that would function as a suite for a family. Secondly, and you've seen this on the plans that were submitted, that the amenity area will be enhanced with a larger lobby, pool and deck, and then a roof-level observation tower. The fourth category and objective is the employee environment, and I heard there was references to this actually in the earlier application about concerns about how the employees and then the site would function, and that was one of the key objectives here, to expand the back of the house areas for the hotel and to better accommodate the staff and their workspaces and environment. For instance, a little more specificity with the second point, that it creates brand new areas for the employees, including a general manager's office and a break room. With that, I'm going to ask if Mr. Sholkoff would review some of the features of the design.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I've been here just a little while ago, so I think I'm familiar with everyone here, maybe the attorney. I'm Jeff Sholkoff. I'm an architect and done work off and on in Rehoboth over the last 30 years. So I guess I just want to start by saying, I know we've talked a lot about in the previous projects, the design guidelines and the character of buildings. We don't have any wow thing to show you today. We're not here to present, we're here to present the fundamentals and make sure we're heading down the right path. This isn't going to be the presentation of the character. I just want to start out saying that. I also, as we started out when we met with Ms. Gray and Mr. Janis early in the process, just really reinforce, and this slide shows this, that the core of this project is really two things. One is mostly it's a renovation of existing space. There are these rooms, the building is concrete, cast concrete plank. Every wall in it is a block wall. We looked early on at like taking the whole thing down or doing major renovations to it. It didn't pencil out. You know, this is really, at its core, 80% of the enclosed space is facelift and improvement of existing space. We have about 15% proposed as a new building addition to help expand some amenity space and to help expand some guest rooms to be some larger rooms. The rooms are quite small in their original form. They're simple, small hotel rooms. We want to expand the offering in 5 or 6 of the rooms. There is a space under the building that right now you'll see we have done this sort of tricky switch to make the parking simpler and cleaner and safer and use some of the space under the building where people now park that's quite inconvenient. I'll show that in more detail later. But the other big thing is the amenity space. So quite a bit of this project is just an enlarged pool deck. And Mr. Hutt will talk a little bit about FAR later, but you'll see that we will need to get a FAR variance. Mr. Hutt will talk about that. But a very significant part of the reason we need that is to build outdoor space and the fact that over and under the deck count as gross floor area. So I just want to still reinforce that, you know, this slide is showing actual built square footage. There's a different slide that shows FAR calculations. But of what we're building, we're expanding the deck greatly and the public amenity outdoor areas greatly, all within the center of the block, very little impact on the public. And then we're mostly renovating existing rooms. So he showed you the pictures just to, you know, one of the constraints we have in this is The building is flat-faced right to the property line. The balconies are right to the property line. The structure, the roof line is right to the property line. We will be making this look a lot better. But we do have constraints, and we'll talk a little bit more about the some of the current codes. So for example, this doesn't meet, obviously, the sloping setback above 14 feet on Wilmington Avenue. So to do anything to the roof line, we know we're going to need to ask that as a variance. This diagram is not so much to illustrate character, but to illustrate where we think we can do things. So it illustrates three things. One is that we'd like to make some more openings on some of the balconies so they have more views up and down the beach and open up and down the street and open it up. We'd like to be able to put some kind of cornice on the building so that it just has more of a cap and along, in some of the design guidelines and CDP provisions. And we would plan to screen the parking lot. Right now, the parking is completely exposed from both Wilmington and Delaware. And one of the plans is to build a fence around the entire property and well screen the parking from public ways. From the back, the building is, the pool deck is a very small pool deck that was built in after the fact sometime in the intervening years. It's basically a motel-style building that has outdoor access. I guess what we haven't said yet is that there is an intention to try to extend the seasons, enclose parts of the walkways that are possible to enclose, and be able to operate more year-round. This is an aerial view of the proposed deck, so you can see where this large deck becomes really significant. The addition of 2 family suites on the eastern side of the property. I'll go over that in more detail in the plans. And then we have a common amenity space on the roof. It was written in the slide of before as a roof deck. It's not really a roof deck on the top of the roof. It's a deck on top of the second floor at the 3rd floor level, and has a room and a bit of outdoor space associated with it for common events or for amenity space. The proposal is to enclose this portion of the walkway to create indoor access to the rooms, to take what was the pool deck, current pool deck, and expand it significantly, add a hot tub, keep the existing stairways, keep the existing walkways, keep the existing rooms for the most part. The elevator is to get greatly improved to meet gurney requirements by the fire marshal. New elevator fits in the same shaft, we've determined that. So the location in this and the impact doesn't change there. As Mr. Hutt said, we're not proposing to add any rooms in terms of numbers. It's 38 rooms existing, 38 rooms proposed. Of the 38 rooms, 36 of them are renovated as is. 3 of them are going to get, I'll get to the plan part, will be easier to explain this, but 3 of them are going to get a bedroom added to them to be suites. And then the 2 suites that we're adding are like family suites. So there's a total of 5 suites created here, and there'll be 33 of the exact same rooms of the form and the size and shape that they are now. The employee environments, I think the Seaboard folks take very seriously. They feel like to operate a good hotel, if the people are well served and the employees are well cared for and they have adequate space for the back of the house operations, for breaks, for management, it all helps them put on a better presentation to the public. And to maintain employees long-term and keep a good staff. They have a fantastic staff. So all the things that Mr. Hutt mentioned of an improved kitchen, improved laundry, improved storage, break room, manager's office, all fit on the 1st floor. The pool and the deck I talked about already. And the parking, drive, and streetscape. I guess I wanted to focus on this a little bit because what we're doing, here's the ground level plan. So these are the same plans that you were offered that are in your package, but now they've been color-coded to make a few things clearer, and then there's a few diagrams coming up on them. But the big thing that we're doing is where this is yellow is an existing parking area that if any of you are familiar with the property, you turn in, the door is immediately to the right to go in the lobby, and then you can go back under the building and park, and it's very much non-conforming and very difficult to get in and out of, especially when there's much traffic. The big proposal here is to just straighten out the drive aisle and make it one way and put the parking all just along the drive aisle. And the way we're doing that is by actually removing part of the lobby and removing part of this service space over here, and then filling in underneath the building in the area that is now the problem area. Also in the process, we're proposing to move the lobby and the entry back farther in on the property so that as guests pull in on the driveway, they have a place that's farther from the street to you know, not back up onto the street so readily. I think as I've driven in and out of here many, many times over the past couple of years, I think the greatest contribution to safety here is not having people pull out of this parking lot onto Wilmington Avenue. It's a very tight space. It's bounded by the building on both sides, right to the sidewalk. There's no view angle. And it's a heavily trafficked portion of the sidewalk. As you know, it's the Ocean Block. It's everybody coming up and down the street there. So we feel like a really significant aspect of improving safety in this project is to have it entrance only off of Wilmington. And you know, where somebody turning in can obviously see people on the sidewalk and get their timing right and pull in. So the green represents areas that is currently existing interior spaces, the elevator, the dining area they serve breakfast and do some evening events, daytime lounge for guests, and the small laundry area that's back here. The light blue is areas of the lobby and the check-in, which now basically is moving back into here, and then the rest of the yellow is this expanded employee space, the kitchen, the employee break room, the manager's office, an upgraded and improved ADA accessible guest bathroom right off the lobby when people arrive. The elevator, which now is accessed from outdoors, comes into this lobby space and becomes part of the you know, inner functioning that doesn't expose people to the weather to go up and down to their rooms. Please feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions along the way here. I'll just keep rolling. If not, this is just a blow up of the same plan. On the second floor, second level, the green is all the guest rooms that are being renovated as is. So you can see here that graphic showing that kind of 80% of the building remaining, and the pink is the area that we're proposed to add, and then the brown is all the deck area proposed to be added. The slightly shaded area here is the existing pool deck, so you can see that that's significant, the size of it. It almost fills the block, the rear part of the block. It actually doesn't fill the block. I think that's a little bit of a misstatement, and if I go back 2 slides, I would show you that this red line here is the limit of that pool deck. So it is still back about 36 feet, 38 feet from Delaware Avenue. And it is set back 5.5 feet from the neighboring property, which is residential. But it's built, you know, at or near the property line on the eastern side within the commercial district. The second and third floor are very similar to each other, or third and fourth, I guess, levels. The rooms are called 200 level and 300 level. So this is one of the new family suites. These rooms back on the west side are sort of motel-style rooms without a good private balcony. And so we plan to keep them as is and improve them, but to provide a balcony or a kind of a deck on each floor as an extension to provide an amenity mostly to those people in those rooms to be able to go and sit outside there. Same thing happens on the floor above. And then on the floor above has this common area room that can be used for games, events, family gatherings, and has a bit of an outdoor, like I say, roof deck, but not on the roof of the top floor. Roof of, it's on this third level right out. I guess I'd hold that for any questions now, and then I think Mr. Hutt will talk about the process and how we're moving forward with this.
Anyone of the Planning Commission have any questions?
It's just a request for the future. It wasn't appropriate now, but when you get to the point where you have better defined drawings, could you please make sure they're D-size drawings?
Yeah.
Because trying to work with the little things is pretty much worthless, basically.
So they were all designed to be printed on 11 by 17, or you guys have them all printed on?
Even on 11 by 17, D-size from an engineering standpoint, D-size drawings, you get a totally different perspective when you see.
For the 24, so you can
Right.
print the full size 24
Right.
by 36. Okay, will do.
I have a question about that second floor setback. I can't remember what was done when the Avenue Inn was expanded and renovated, whether those were set back or whether they got a variance for it or what, or we didn't have it in the code then. I just can't remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I would have to go back to see what was done. I was not employed with the city at that time.
Alex, do you want to talk about that?
There was a, I can answer the question if I may. There was a variance granted at the Avenue. I applied with
Okay.
them, and there was a variance granted.
For that? Okay.
Correct. And
Okay.
Alex Moore.
Yeah.
Seabrook,
I was gonna say it was
on
on
the
the-
sloping setback.
Right.
It wasn't actually, that was a new build, so the code was in place, the 14-degree setback was in place when we did the original building, and then when we did the addition, we met it. So we didn't need it. It was already part of the code, right?
Oh, so it does have that. That's what I thought.
It does.
Okay. But there's no thought of doing that here?
Well, we couldn't because it's existing.
Okay, well, without making more changes, yeah, right.
We'd have to cut off.
Cut off,
the
right,
front of the
okay,
building.
yeah, okay.
I could clarify a little bit on that one too.
Microphone.
Please step up to the microphone.
The building at the Avenue, the addition, the 28 rooms that were added in 2017, for the most part met the 14 feet and then 30-degree angle. And what we got a variance for was the towers.
Oh, right,
and
yes,
a couple of the
I remember
dormers
that now. Yep.
on the basis of they were non-habitable space, and we were
Right.
just trying to enhance the character with a little bit
Right,
of that.
yes, I remember that, okay, all right.
I think that's a very good point, because when you did that, and I was on the commission at that time, had you done it to code, it would have been as ugly as hell.
Yeah, that's the one, that was
And
Plan
really
A,
was
Plan B,
totally
yes.
inappropriate for the
Yeah,
character of the city.
right.
And so we went, and I think we did a letter of support when you
Yep.
went to the.
Please remember that comment when we asked for the parapet.
We know you're not the Board of Adjustment either, so anything might be helpful.
And I'm certainly, there's going to be some more questions, and some of them might be even clarified as I go through the last couple slides that we have.
Yeah.
As was referenced, there is, in going through these plans and looking at the comprehensive development plan and other code and meeting with the city, there are certain things that we know there's going to be some relief that needs to be requested, or other questions that there are. One is a zoning clarification, and that was referenced in the transmittal letter for the concept plan. And I'll go over that in a moment. Parking, Mr. Sholkoff just went through some of that, and I'll have a slide that demonstrates that even a little better. The FAR will certainly be an application to the Board of Adjustment for a variance to that. And then, of course, the setback or step back that was just spoken about. The first of those.
I have a question about the FAR. Did I read in the packet that the variance you're going for is for it to keep the FAR it has now? It was built before the code, so it's 2.52 now, and you're going for that, or are you actually increasing it?
You're jumping ahead of me, but I'm going to
Okay.
just go right to there.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry. I thought you already talked about FAR. Okay, it's fine.
With
wait.
respect to FAR,
Yeah,
the FAR that we would be requesting is 2.53.
okay.
Presently, the building does meet the FAR.
It's 2.0 now?
It's under that.
okay,
It's
all right.
technically under that.
Okay.
And as Mr. Sholkoff indicated, much of that FAR calculation, as you know, is that deck
Right.
which counts above and below. So there is a great deal of this. It's not actual bulk that's being added to the building. It's that deck that is increasing the FAR. And you can see that what's been shown on this table, I know this is important to the Planning Commission often, is a floor-by-floor analysis of how much area is conditioned, how much is walkways, and how much is covered deck. And so that's broken down floor by floor. Also shown on here is that, for instance, for lot area, this conforms now, and it would conform after the proposed renovations. Going back for a moment to the zoning clarification, as was indicated in that transmittal letter, there is a sort of, this property has 3 zoning classifications. In the memo that was provided by the city staff, it noted that you have the C2 Commercial Amusement District, the C3 Secondary Commercial District, and then the R2 General Residence District. And you can see that on the screens with the different colorings. And on Delaware Avenue, what we view as a mapping error, and I know that the city hasn't done all of its research yet, or at least when the memo was prepared, it hadn't done all of its research on that yet. But you can see that there's this 14-foot portion which is part of Lot 7 on Delaware Avenue. That 14 feet is part of, and has always been part of the Beachview Hotel. Significantly, I would note that we did some research just to see how long it's been like that. And the first time there was an outconveyance of a portion of Lot 7 was in 1939, and the first 36 feet was conveyed to somebody unrelated to the family. And then the following year, in 1940, 14 feet of it was conveyed to members of ultimately the Shockley family, and then it's moved forward in time through that. And so that's why there was a reference on the prior slide to this clarification that's needed as part of this process. What it appears to us happened is whenever someone who did the zoning map, what they chose to do was to honor the lines from 1828 Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association plot and just use the 50 by 100 blocks to show what the zoning was, rather than the 1940 deeds or 1939 and 40 deeds that actually split that Lot 7 into 2 smaller areas. And again, I think that's consistent with the fact that the Beachview Hotel construction began in 1980. The city has certainly had a number of zoning maps since then that could have colored this a little differently, but I think, again, they honored the original Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association lot lines instead of what has actually occurred over time.
So does that make it a mapping error, or does that make it just a rezoning that never happened?
I would argue it makes it a mapping error, but the city was still doing some research on sort of how that arose. It would be, and the reason, again, to go back, the reason that I would view it as a mapping error is because the hotel has been there, it got permitted and such, and you wouldn't permit something without something having occurred unless it was already appropriate for that. And so that's why it appears just to be a mapping error, where the coloration on that 14 feet of Lot 7 from the original Rehoboth Beach Camp Meeting Association plot is just incorrectly identified.
So there's nothing in any of the documentation of when it was built or anything that indicates that was a residential lot?
Not that I've seen.
Okay.
What's on that piece now? Is it blacktop or?
I'll ask Mr. Janis to confirm the date that the Rehoboth Beach adopted its zoning code.
1974, right?
Its first zoning code. It's obviously changed many times.
40 was the first one? Okay, so the current one was 74, okay. So, okay. So then it was residential in 1940, yes, according to the code, according to the map, anyway. I understand there's 2 different maps too, right? Didn't you all tell me?
The Fritchman and the Deuce Bieber, I had a case about that 20 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's important for
Yeah.
us
So
to figure out.
Has there been any resolution of that issue at all?
I know we're currently actively looking into it to see what possibly could have happened. We don't have an answer yet. but we are actively looking through it.
And if there is no solution, or the solution says, oops, it's residential, then what do we do? Rezone it?
Let us figure out what happened first, and then we'll try to do
okay,
the
yeah.
cleanup or.
I guess related to that, and I don't want to be skipping ahead, but related to that, it's also split in the C, C2, C3.
That's true.
Is there any thought of making that all C3? Either from the city side or from your side?
From the applicant's side, I can tell you that the answer is no, and not to be difficult, but just to keep the project moving forward. And because, and just functionally, and this was in Mr. Janis's memo, the hotel is an appropriate use in both C2 and C3. And so rather than add another step into a process and complicate it further, again, the goal is to get this efficiently. And in a moment, I'll show you a timeline for this, and you'll see how efficient we want to be on this project. With respect to other relief that will need to be sought as that ground level is reconfigured, and Mr. Sholkoff went through this, but the parking will be greatly enhanced as well as the drive aisle, but there still will be a little bit of nonconformity, and so that will likely require a variance application to the Board of Adjustment as well. You can see on the table that's on the screen, you can see what's existing. As was mentioned, the number of rooms stays the same, but presently there are 38 parking places, but there is not the additional ones that are required by the code. What is proposed is 40, so that would be compliant. With respect to the nonconformities in the parking area, presently there are 15 parking places that are nonconforming, and those nonconformities vary as to both width and length. With the proposed renovation, there would be 6, and those nonconformities are all with respect to width only. With respect to ADA compliance, there is presently 1, and it is nonconforming, and I would say it'd be very difficult, I think, for someone to use that who needed to use it. When you see the plan, or when you looked at the plans, you would see that there are now 2 conforming ADA parking places that are compliant and would be appropriate to use. The drive aisle direction Mr. Sholkoff talked about, that moves from being 2-way to a 1-way. And then within that drive aisle, the existing condition has a number, has 135 linear feet that are not compliant. You can see, and it's broken down there, there are some that is 15 feet wide, even though it's a 2-way drive aisle, some that are 18 feet wide, and some that are 20 feet wide, which that should be 24 feet wide. With the revised plan, there was only 39 linear feet, so we almost got to a full 100-foot reduction, but we were just short of that. But there's 39 linear feet now that would be non-compliant. And then we've done some drawings to help demonstrate that. What's shown with respect to the blue color is the nonconformities that exist with respect to those drive aisles. And as you may recall, Mr. Sholkoff talked about these awkward parking places that are going to be removed and replaced with the lobby area. And as he was saying, if a person enters from Wilmington Avenue, you make a right-hand turn, and then there is these parking places back in this section of the building where the future employee rooms and lobby would be. And as you can see, based on all the nomenclature and coloring that's there, all of those items were non-conforming. So that's the existing condition. In the proposed condition, you can see that the drive aisle now is 1-way. As Mr. Sholkoff reviewed the plans, this area is now enclosed space that is very usable by employees and the public, providing this central, not quite central, but a much more centralized and better location for the hotel entrance. And then you can see the 39 linear feet that are still highlighted in blue that are non-compliant with respect to the drive aisle. And then you can see the 6 parking places that are identified that do have a nonconformity with respect to the width of those, but again, still greatly reducing the number of nonconformities. And for people like me who are much more visually oriented and can understand these things better when there's cars and people that are drawn on the picture, this was prepared to demonstrate what the current condition is. And this shows, of course, two-way traffic, the number of nonconformities that exist with respect to both the drive aisle and the parking areas. And you can see the interaction that pedestrians and vehicles have, which is not good. In addition, just the interaction between various vehicles. And then, of course, this area here, which is a difficult parking area presently. With what's proposed, as you can see, even visually, it just makes a whole lot more sense when with that single direction drive aisle and with the main lobby being in that location that's highlighted in yellow. And again, just the non-conforming, 6 non-conforming parking places that were identified earlier. The last item, and I know Commissioner Gay, you were asking about this. Hopefully this helps to demonstrate the requested relief with respect to the setback. The yellow that's highlighted on the screens is that cornice or parapet that Mr. Sholkoff was talking about to try to provide some additional character to the building in compliance with a comprehensive development plan. What's shown there is about a 5-foot section above the building. It's important to note that that stays within the height limit for the building or in the code. So there's no height variance that's needed. The variance that would be needed is with respect to that 30-degree setback that starts at 14 feet above the street level. And that's represented, of course, by that red line on the screen. And certainly, as you can see, the building itself, as Mr. Sholkoff said earlier, it's built right to the property line, so it certainly is not in compliance with that. And while there's going to be some things that Mr. Sholkoff will do to provide some additional character to that, as he indicated, the building is not going to, that 14, starting at 14 feet and going up is not going to be removed from the building. And so this variance request would just be essentially extending that nonconformity just above that, but certainly still within the height limitation that's set forth in the code. The last thing I did want to talk about is the revitalization timeline that was set forth in those initial meetings. September 11th is the date that the concept review application was filed for. You see today's date. We're hopeful that we could be on the January Board of Adjustment hearing.
That's not the date of the January Board of Adjustment meeting unless they changed it. That date is our meeting in January, isn't it? Isn't that a Friday? Oh,
January 13th is when the board.
oh, they're having a special meeting? Okay, great. Okay, good to know. Okay, excellent. Thanks.
And then after that, between February and April would be site plan reviews with this body. And then April and May, Mr. Sholkoff and the engineers would be busy trying to get building permit applications submitted and plans submitted. And then in September, they would hope to close the Beachview Hotel to complete the renovations and then be open in May of 2026 to the public with the new and improved the Beachview Hotel. Again, to sum this all up, that's a very high level, again, a concept level review to tell you what, or try to help explain to you what the vision was for this project, the objectives that were attempted to be achieved in the plans that you saw. And certainly myself and Mr. Sholkoff, Mr. Moore, Mr. Helms are certainly available to answer any questions you may have or any thoughts. Again, we're hopeful that there is some feedback to know better how to proceed with this renovation.
Okay, any questions? Ms. Stewart.
Go ahead.
Regarding your parking situation, so when the person checking in comes into the street, they turn right and they come through that aisle, and then do they just park somewhere, or are they, is there a spot they hang? They're not hanging on the street waiting to check in. In other words, they'll actually go into that parking area and then go to the lobby or something?
The answer to your question is yes, but I'm going to ask Mr. Moore to talk about the
Okay.
actual operation
Okay.
of that.
That'd be correct. We have our policies of checkouts 11. If people show up early, hopefully people have checked out. We try to get them on the lot as quickly as possible. But yes,
Okay.
they typically will come park immediately in a spot on the lot.
Got it. Okay. That's great.
And the hope is, and the goal, one of the objectives was to move that lobby more centrally located so that people have a landing spot when they get there. I think presently there may be some confusion because of where the lobby is and people have to enter and exit and go inside and outside, sort of in back and forth as they check in.
Right.
And with the central location there that you can see on the screens in yellow, hopefully, and with a single directional drive aisle, hopefully that clarifies that and helps to eliminate any type of situation where that might occur.
If I could add, operationally, the way the parking is today, the way you have to pull, I don't know if anyone's walked, but I would recommend, we're closed now, so you could, well, we close in a couple weeks, but go under and look at it. It is so tight. It's hard to believe when a building was built in the early 70s, as big as cars
Right.
were, that it was even, the architect, we were fired, Jeff. But it's so tight, and that's our biggest complaint, is how difficult the parking is. And when we do have people, we wind up having people park on the street because they can't get vehicles in there. So it's a lot more expensive for us to change this parking, to take out the lobby, and to do this, what we're doing, but it's simply a customer service feature that we really need to be able, and we realize it also adds the feature of the one-way lane, we think is gonna be much more beneficial.
And then I presume therefore that you're not going to, you don't intend to ask the city to abandon spaces out in front of the hotel.
We don't need that, because
Thank
the
you.
lane already
Thank
is
you for
wide.
that.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Refreshing.
Mr. Strange?
It's just a general question, looking at the schedule, and this is something that has vexed me for the last couple of years. For plans that have been presented in a general form now, a sketch review, and then going to the Board of Adjustment before the Planning Commission has ever seen the detailed plans. And in at least 3 examples, when we finally get the plans, even though the Board of Adjustment had said A, B, C, D, we find out that E, F, G, and H are completely not code compliant and are, quite frankly, delay the program by many, many, many months. And you're proposing here, based on a sketch review, of going to the Board of Adjustment first, which is obviously your privilege. There's nothing in the law that says it has to be in reverse order. But I've just observed that as a planning commissioner, I think it's unfortunately a bad trend that's been happening, and it actually ends up delaying the project more.
I 2 comments with respect to that, and certainly we recognize, Commissioner Strange, that there's always a little bit of a chicken and an egg that goes into these types of applications. First, and I haven't looked recently, and I didn't look before today, but the prescribed process that was set forth in the rules and regulations with respect to the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission indicates that you should go to the Board of Adjustment first to get any variances and then follows suit and gets here. That's my understanding, and the code may have changed, but the last time I looked at the code, that is what the code indicated should occur. It was Board of Adjustment
Right, and I
then
guess
Planning
it's
Commission.
back to my other supposition about the other parts of the code. The Board of Adjustment, historically, at least for the last 12 years I've been on the Planning Commission, the Board of Adjustment doesn't have anywhere near the skill sets that are necessary for the broad range of things that have to be discussed and analyzed. And you're not going to solve that problem. I'm not going to solve that problem. But I just want to at least make the observation that when you go to the Board of Adjustment, things may not be as quick as you would otherwise envision, because the expertise that's being applied at this level is very different than what's being applied at the Board of Adjustment. And there's several examples of that over the last few years where that's occurred. And it's unfortunate, and it ends up delaying things even more, but as you say, that's the way the situation is right now.
And to me, there's a second part of this, and that is that it's one of the reasons that it's not a requirement that we have this project concept review. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to have this project concept review was so that you all could lay your eyes on this plan. And if you see something that you think might have a Board of Adjustment implication beyond the items that I identified this afternoon, that you would give us a heads up on that so that we can include it in that Board of Adjustment application, because certainly we don't want to get whipsawed between the Board of Adjustment and the Planning Commission and have to travel back and forth between those bodies and slow the process down. But that was the thought process in participating in this project concept review. And I know you don't have full-size plan sets, but again, that was the thought process.
And Mike raises a good point. As I recall, the Avenue Inn went to the Board of Adjustment twice, once before and once during site plan review. I don't remember which was, variables were which time, but I think it did. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, this just occurred to me, and I don't remember if you said it on your plans or not, but loading berth? Is there one? No. Oh. Non-existent now, right? Okay, Matt, what, do they need a variance for that? I mean, they're expanding, right? So
I would say we'd have to take a look at what the proposal is compared to what is existing, see how it conflicts with the nonconformity rules.
Okay.
And make a judgment from there. I don't think I have enough information presently to tell me yay or nay.
okay.
But
So there's a variable right there that could end up going back depending on what happens. But, and so the non-conform, it's 50%? Is that what it is essentially?
it's basically 50%.
Yeah, okay. So it's possible that the fact that this is a renovation might keep it under the 50%.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and
And recognizing no new rooms.
Right, yeah, no, I got it.
A small
Yeah,
expansion, but no
yeah. Right, okay, yeah, and the FARs, yeah, okay, I could see that, and, yep.
and it's also important to recognize that a reconditioning of a room is not
Oh, I
counted in
understand
that 50%.
that. No, but I was thinking of the added space with the added FAR and the pool deck and, I don't know. But yeah, but if they keep in the walls and all that, then.
That's the
then
calculation.
chances are it would be under, I
And if I
guess.
could add, we've also thought about the same thing, and we're not expanding the operation.
Right, I got it.
This pool deck doesn't create more deliveries, we're
Right.
not expanding the things that the loading berth might require.
Right, yeah, interesting, okay.
And the other thing that differentiates this from some of the other recent applications, even the ones I referenced at the outset, is this is a hotel only. There's no retail, there's no restaurant.
Oh, yeah, no, I know
None of
that.
those other uses.
Yeah.
And so that's why, hopefully that would help to
Well, any new
resolve
hotel,
any
I only
concerns.
mentioned it because any hotel is required to now. I don't know when that went in the code. I don't recall right offhand when that went in the code. But I guess it was after this was built. So, but I think it's a beautiful plan, and
Anyone
looks
else?
nice.
Mr. Ellis?
Yeah, I just want to applaud the entire effort. I think, this could do a great deal to make a really first-class hotel, and the property certainly needs it. So I applaud it very much, notwithstanding that there's still these issues.
Mr. Walton?
Thank you for
welcome.
Thank you. To Commissioner Gay's question, you saw us scurrying here at the table trying to look at the computer. The comprehensive plan where that 14-foot residential spot is
Yeah.
designates it as commercial. So because it has a commercial designation, no development is permitted except in conformity with the comprehensive plan. So whether or not it's going to be a map amendment or a rezoning, it's already called for in the comprehensive plan
Okay,
to be commercial, whether or not that's whatever commercial designation that is.
right, okay. I didn't realize it was that way in the plan. Okay, yeah.
Which I think further lends itself to being a mapping error
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
zoning map.
sounds that way. Yeah,
I haven't gotten that far yet, but we'll work on it.
okay.
Mr. Strange?
Yeah, just one other, really just a comment. Obviously, one of the variances you're going to be, it looks as if you're going to be going for is because of the number of parking spaces. You can't quite meet the width and the length requirements for all the parking spaces. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
But-
and
Good, yeah.
And with that in mind, and I know the way the code is currently structured, where it originally said that the two spaces for the resident family, which there aren't any resident family. But I guess it would be a question of approach as to, do you want all the spaces that you have under code, which requires to be a total of 40, correct? But of that 40, several of them are not going to be code compliant with regard to width or length. If, for the sake of argument, just for your perspective, if you didn't have two spaces for, quote, the resident family, would that have the 38 spaces, that would be code compliant.
No, Mike, they already have 38 in their proposal with a handful that aren't compliant. So they aren't.
So you don't have two
They
to
don't
play-
have 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have 40 compliant. He's saying would they have 38 compliant?
I thought you had 38 spaces.
Actually, we have,
They have 40.
Oh, you have 40?
right now, current,
Okay. I got you.
I think are you asking if we got rid of the 2 spaces, could we
Yeah.
take that
Right.
space to have 30? That would have to be a Jeff's
And,
question.
and I'm going to ask Mr. Solkov if he can answer that in more detail, but I
Yeah,
will
the
tell you
additional variance.
that I have not participated in nearly the number of design meetings that I know they have participated in. Even in the limited ones that I have talked to, the exact question that you have asked has been part of the discussion as to how best to make as many parking spaces as possible that are as compliant as possible. And that's your cue, Jeff.
I'll just briefly, we can get into it in more detail, but we were asked to put in quite a bit of effort in this to try to achieve 40 spaces. I want to make it clear that the non-compliance, none of them are length, as he pointed out too, and we have 3 spaces that are 8 feet wide instead of 9 feet wide, and we have 3 spaces that are 8'6" wide instead of 9 feet wide. And the non-compliance of the drive aisle that remains is 22 or 23 feet instead of 24. So we just feel like we're so close to achieving 40 reasonable spaces and 2 fully compliant van-accessible ADA spaces right by the front door, which allows the 8-foot aisle to be the way in that's open all the time. That, and we have pushed and pulled with our structural engineer to have 10-inch wide concrete columns under the pool so that we can achieve this. So I mean, the answer is yes, we could have 38 spaces. I believe it would be compliant with the number required for rooms. In any case, I believe that the owners would love to, parking spaces are valuable. It makes it more functional for everyone. They're all big enough. There was a question we asked Mr. Janis early on about compact spaces. So apparently in public parking lots in Rehoboth, the council can designate, or the mayor?
City manager.
City manager can designate and accept a certain number of compact spaces. So, I mean, but we can't access that for private. But what we really have here are 6 of 40 spaces that are large compact spaces. They're longer than compact spaces, and they well meet the width of compact spaces. So we just, I guess we feel like it's a reasonable question to bring before the Board of Adjustment. We would hope that you guys would see that favorably also.
Basically, which is nice to hear, you've really evaluated that.
Yeah, right.
Which is, in some cases, has not been the case.
Well,
It's
another way
just
to
been a
look at it
flip.
is they've tasked us and paid
also
us
with
to spend a lot of time looking at that.
With regard to the city manager, that's on public right-of-way.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not on private.
Correct.
Yeah, and we've had conversations internally. We've had conversations with city staff. We've sort of got it to this point, and I wish we could get it that other inch, or what we need is actually about 3 feet total, but
Between all the spaces.
between everything, yeah, so.
Jeff, while you're up, what is the nature of the non-compliance on the drive that you mentioned? Maybe I
So
missed
this
that.
is a diagram of that. So the entire drive aisle is 24 feet. Can I just, will it just blow up with, here? Right, so the drive aisle, as you see, is actually 26 feet much of the way along here, and is 24 feet through the middle, and this one is 22.4, and this one is 23 feet instead of 24. And this is simply a function of the dimension between the existing stairway and the property line, and providing full depth parking spaces. And then this is a function of, similarly, the dimension between the elevator and the existing transformer.
Am I wrong, but isn't it a 20 width if it's a one-way drive?
If you could angle the parking spaces, I believe that's correct, but we studied angled parking spaces and they yielded less. Is that?
Right.
Yeah, the only relief you get is a decrease in width from angled. It doesn't matter. Our code doesn't specify if you were to turn it from one direction. It just says, here's the width of it, and your only relief then is to angle your parking for a lesser drive aisle.
But I think that's the important component here, and hopefully the Board of Adjustment sees that as well, is that presently, the nonconformity with respect to a two-way drive aisle is much greater. It's 135 feet, and there's many feet that are missing in the drive aisle. Here, we're missing a foot and then a foot and a half for a very short distance on a one-way lane. Again, I'm not trying to make my case to the board. I'll do that when we get to the Board of Adjustment. But hopefully that, and there was certainly a lot of time and effort that was put into getting to the plan that you see in front of you. But again, if there are other ideas of that, we're certainly happy to entertain those.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add a point of clarity to Mr. Strange's comments. Mr. Strange, the requirement for the resident family has been removed. However, they're still required those two additional. I just want to put that on the.
And that was, with that change, what I was really leading up to is, because we made that change, and it's now just 2 extra spaces, if it was consolidated back, would that increase the width? And of course, it's been indicated can't. They're really in a conundrum here. So I accept that, yes.
Very good.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you. Oh, and just as I do have a printed copy of all those slides, if anybody would.
Yes, that'd be
like
nice.
them.
That'd be great.
Just start here.
Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
This is great, thank you. Thank you, you too.
Refreshing.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so,
Okay. Ms. Gray, building and licensing report, do you have something for us?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Any new applications?
well, I think,
Is that a partitioning?
petitioning,
Yes.
okay. Is that one that, I guess you may not know yet, is that one that would go preliminary or go straight?
We just received it.
Okay,
so,
fine.
So we have to
Okay.
set a meeting, an internal meeting to review.
Okay.
do it.
Mr. Dewey?
There is one application that has just been received that is considered a major subdivision application, and it regards the property commonly known as Ocean Bay Mart. The developer is renaming that, or proposing a name for Oceanside Reserve. This application will result in approximately 31 single-family lots. All lots, as currently sketched, will meet or exceed minimum lot requirements of 5,000 square feet and will also contain at least a 4,000 square foot rectangle. As Planning Commission Secretary, I'm in the process of completing a review of the application for completeness of the submission as per Code 23612, where it is the role of the Planning Commission Secretary to conduct an inventory of these materials and provide a report based on completeness or lack thereof, so that those deficiencies can be addressed.
Right, sir. No action required on that at this point?
No action at this point.
Okay.
Can I,
Yes, sir.
can I ask a question? Has anybody received D-size drawings for this proposal yet?
Ms.
we
Womack is shaking her head no.
They're all in my office.
Right.
You don't because it's a major subdivision, is handled by the Secretary of Planning Commission.
So we have to go through that process first.
First, yeah.
Okay.
Before we do anything
So
else.
So eventually we'll see
Yeah,
stay
eventually.
tuned.
appropriate size drawing.
Right.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Anything else? Okay, well, we will convene again tomorrow.
Also at 1:30, correct?
How do we
Well, it
notice
says
it?
on the, yeah, that's what, yes, that is what is on the agenda.
1:30, all right. Have a good
Okay,
night's rest.
Yeah,
See
and
you
then,
tomorrow.
well, you have to adjourn us.
You're adjourned.
Okay. I can't get this damn thing open. What's wrong with?